grouping today. Again, we focused on the trinomial factoring yesterday, using that X method to kind of help us organize our thoughts. And then we did GCF, greatest common factor, and difference of two squares. Okay, so this is fourth type of factoring we are reviewing this week. So when we are factoring by grouping, okay, what we are going to do, we have four terms here, okay, in each of these polynomials. You can see there's four terms. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to always check for a GCF first, like we talked about, but we're going to do it in pairs. Okay, so we're not going to pull a GCF from the entire, all four terms. We're going to group this into two groups. Okay, so when I say grouping, I'm going to try to color code here. So I'm going to do the first two terms together in a group, and I'm going to do the second two terms together in a group. And what I'm looking for is the GCF of each group individually. Okay, so in this first group, okay, here in the first set of parentheses, what is the GCF? What can both of those be divided by evenly? 3 what? Look at your p values and their exponents. This is, yeah, p cubed and p squared. So I could take p squared out of both of these. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put the steps here. So we group, and then we do GCF of each group. Okay, so my GCF of this first group, y'all said, is 3p squared, which is going to leave me with just a p in the first term. What is that going to leave me with over here? If I divide by 3p squared, what does that become? A 1. If you actually need to show that division, you need to show we're dividing by 3p squared. Over here, the 3's reduced, but the p cubed divided by p squared was p. But here, the 3's reduce and the p squares reduce. So there's nothing left over there. It is not a 0, though. Anything divided by itself is not 0. Anything divided by itself is 1. Okay, so we get a 1 here, and we have to put that 1. I really kind of squished that up in there. I'm going to come down a little bit. So we took out 3p squared, and we were left with p minus 1. Now in the second group, okay, what can be divided out of both of these? A 9, right? So I take out, and it's a positive 9. So I'm going to put positive 9. Okay, and that is going to leave me with p. Hey, what does that become over there again? What's 9 divided by 9? It's also 1, and it's a minus, so minus 1. That is what you are always looking for, okay? What your leftovers are should be the same. If your leftovers, when you take out the GCF of those two groups, if your leftovers aren't the same, then you've made a mistake, okay? They should be the same. Okay, so p minus 1 was our leftovers. So that is one of our factors. So you take p minus 1, that's a factor. And then the GCFs that you pulled out come together as the other factor. So 3p squared plus 9. Now, I'm going to look at this and see, can I factor either of these any further? So p minus 1, that's done. I can't factor that any further. But what about this factor? Is there still a GCF in here that can come out? Oh, there is. So there's a GCF of a 3. Those can both be divided by 3. So that's going to be p squared plus 3. And then we still have the p minus 1. Now that's all being multiplied. I don't really like the look of having that 3 in the middle there, so I'm just going to rearrange that to clean it up and make it look a little nicer. I like to put my coefficient first. Okay, that 3 is just a coefficient. Okay, and then my factors. Bless you. That's as much, and I look at each of those factors and I can't factor them any further. The p squared is a perfect square, but the 3's not, and it's not a difference, so I can't do difference of squares there, so that's out. Okay, and there's nothing to factor out here, so that's as far as we can take it. All right, so let's try, actually, you know what? I want to show you, we could have done the GCF before the grouping. Occasionally all 4 will have a GCF, which they did here. I could have divided a 3 out of everything to start, and that would have been this 3 that's out front at the end. Okay, and then done my grouping. It would have worked out the same. Okay, so if there is a GCF across all 4 terms, you can take it out first. Okay, but if you don't, we took it out at the end. It doesn't matter. We still got that GCF taken out. Okay, so looking at number 2, is there a GCF all the way across the board? Can all of those be divided by something? Yeah, so let's go ahead and take it out first instead of doing the grouping first. Let's do the GCF first. So all 4 of these, we're going to do a GCF. I know they can all be divided by 2. I don't like to have my lead term negative, but it doesn't really matter if you want to divide out 2 or negative 2. If we divide out a negative, just know we're going to change all the signs, right? What about the variables? Do they all have an x? Okay, and what is the highest exponent that I can take out of all of them? X cubed. Okay, so all of them are at least x cubed, so I can take out 2x cubed from each of these. Okay, so negative 2x cubed is my GCF that I'm taking out. Okay, and then my leftovers. Okay, here the negative 2's will reduce. That's a positive 1. X to the 6th over x cubed is going to leave me with x cubed. And 16 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 8. X to the 5th over x cubed is going to leave me with x squared. 4 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 2. And then x to the 4th over x cubed is going to leave me with x. And then a negative divided by negative, that's going to be positive. 32 divided by 2 is 16. And then those x's reduced completely. So far, so good? Okay, now I'll do my grouping. So I'll put the first 2 terms together. And I'll put the second 2 terms together. So in the first group, okay, in the like maroon or red, whatever color you want to call that, okay, what is the GCF here? No number, right? Because the x cubed is just a coefficient of 1, but they both have x. So what can I take out? I can take out x squared from both of those. So if I factor out an x squared, that's going to leave me with x minus 8. Now in the second group, what can I divide out of all of that? Yeah, a 2. Again, I want my leftovers to match, right? That's what we said over here. The leftovers need to match. If I take out just a 2 here, I'm going to be left with negative x, aren't I? I need my leftovers to be positive x. So I'm going to divide out negative 2. Okay, so I'm going to divide out negative 2, which will leave me with positive x. And then 16 divided by negative 2 is going to leave me with negative 8. Now my leftovers match. Do you see that? That's what should happen. Okay, so my leftovers are a factor, and my GCF from the grouping come together as a factor. What am I forgetting here? That original GCF, right? Still there. Didn't go anywhere. Don't forget it. And if I look at all of those, x minus 8 can't be factored further. X squared minus, this is a difference, and this is a square, but 2 is not a perfect square, so I can't factor that any further. That's as far as I can take it. Okay, so you can kind of compare these two and see, did you prefer taking the GCF out of everything at the beginning and then don't forget to keep it in front? Or did you prefer grouping first and then having to take that GCF out of that one of those factors at the end? Okay, so both of those worked out as long as you remember to get that GCF at some point. All right, in number 3, is there a GCF that I can take out of everything? Are all of those divisible by the same number? What number? 2. 2 is the highest that I can divide all of them by. Okay, I could divide 8 by 4, but not 6. I can divide 6 by 3, but not 8. Okay, so 2 is the highest I'm going to be able to divide everything by. What about the variables? Do they all have a variable or no? Yeah, they all have a p. So I can factor out a p with my, that's part of my GCF. So it looks like 2p is my GCF. Then I'm going to put in parentheses what I'm left with when I divide out that 2p. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. P to the 4th over p is p cubed. Negative 6 divided by 2 would be negative 3. It's going to leave me with p squared. Negative 56 divided by 2 is going to be 28, negative 28. P squared divided by p is p. And then 42 divided by 2 is going to be 21. And those p's reduced. So far, so good? All right. So now I'm going to create my 2 groups of those 4 terms in the leftovers. So the first 2, this group, this group. So in the red there, what is my GCF? What can I take out of both of those terms? Just the p to what power? Yeah, p squared. So I can take out a p squared, and that would leave me with 4p minus 3. And then for the blue group, okay, I know I want to be left with a 4p at the front, a positive, so I know I'm going to have to divide out that negative. Okay, and both 28 and 21 are both divisible by 7, aren't they? So I'm going to take out a negative 7. And that will leave me with 4p plus, I'm dividing out a negative, so that's going to become minus 3. Does it look like I did it right? Are my leftovers the same? They are. 4p minus 3. Okay, and then I bring those GCFs together. What am I forgetting here? The 2p, that original GCF. Don't forget about it. It's still there. And none of those can be factored any further. Another one that you might want to check, oh, it's a difference. Oh, that's a perfect square, but 7 is not. So it's not a difference of 2 squares. I can't factor it any further. All right, number 4. Is there a GCF I can take out to begin with? Yeah, those are all divisible by 2 and nothing higher. 2 is the highest I can take out of all of them. Can I take an A out of all of them? No, that last term doesn't have an A. So my GCF here is just a 2. So I take out that 2, and my leftovers will be negative 3a cubed be plus 5a squared minus 12a plus 20. Now I'm going to create my 2 groups. I'll do my first group and my second group. So in my first group here, what can be taken out of both of those? Yeah, just the a squared, right? Okay, if I factor out a squared. Now, I really don't like my lead term to be negative. You know, actually, I probably should have taken out -2 from everything because that would have made the lead term of both of those not negative. So I'm actually going to fix that first before I do anything here. Okay, I'm going to just change my signs here because I don't like having my lead term negative. It makes it a little more complicated. So instead of just 2, I'm going to take out -2 from everything, which is going to leave me with a positive 3a, and then that would be a negative 5a squared. That would become a positive 12a, and then that would be a minus 20. Is everybody okay with what I just changed? I just divided out the negative. Okay, so now I'm going to do my grouping again. So my first group is here. So yeah, anytime your lead term is negative, that's probably your best bet is to go ahead and take out that negative. All right, so a squared can be taken out of both of those terms, and that will leave me with 3a minus 5. And then in blue, 12a minus 20. What can I divide out of both 12 and 20? Okay, so both can be divided by 4, a positive 4, right? And that would leave me with 3a minus 5. That's a good sign because my leftovers match. So 3a minus 5 is a factor. And then I bring together those GCFs I pulled out. So a squared, and then that's a positive 4. And then I don't forget my original GCF that I took out of -2. That's as far as I can take it. I can't do difference of squares. Even though a squared and 4 are both perfect squares, it's not a difference. It's a sum. That's a plus. Okay, so just be real careful with those signs because they do make a difference. All right, so you do have a practice for grouping factoring in Delta Math. If you are not done with any of the other Delta Math assignments, if you want to work on those first, you can. And then a reminder, I'm just going to pull this up over here. It was a quick reminder. Logged in on it. So this is what your Delta Math page should look like. You should have 3 assignments from this week. Okay, we did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay, these are the 3 assignments for the different types of factoring. Okay, day 1, Monday, was the GCF and difference of squares. Yesterday was the trinomials, and then today is grouping. Okay, so all of these, okay, I gave you through the weekend at full credit. There's never going to be any late credit for these. Instead of setting them due a day later and then late credit through the weekend, I'm just giving you full credit on all of these through the long weekend, which ends Monday the 14th at 11:59 p.m. Okay, so as long as these are done by then, you'll get full credit. Okay, under past due, anything under this past due tab, like mine shows a lot because I haven't completed any of these. I just show you examples every so often. Okay, but everything that shows up here under past due is available for late credit, and they should all have this October 10th date. These are all of the assignments from the entire 9 weeks. Okay, if nothing is here under past due, that's fantastic. That means you have done everything that's past due. Okay, but if anything shows up here under past due, you can still do it at late credit until the 10th, that's tomorrow, at 11:59 p.m. Okay, the only ones that you can do past tomorrow are the new ones from this week, the factoring practice. Now, if you choose right now to work on test corrections instead of Delta Math, that's fine, because you can do the Delta Math through the weekend, but test corrections have to be turned in by tomorrow. Okay, so again, okay, tomorrow is the end of the 9 weeks. Okay, so paper, which our corrections are on paper, have to be turned in by tomorrow before you leave school. Okay, so I would say by like 3 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, so if you would prefer to do Unit 2 or Unit 3 test corrections right now, instead of Delta Math, you can, and you've got all weekend to finish that Delta Math. Any questions at this point? The other thing besides Delta Math or test corrections, the only other thing would be the Unit 3 review, which is in Aware. Okay, so you can go and double check, go to log into Aware, and under tests available, if you still see the Unit 3 review, that means you haven't submitted it. Okay, so you can still finish it and submit it. Or if you want me to reopen your review, if you submitted it and got a not great grade, just ask me. I'll reopen it and you can correct the ones you missed and try for a higher grade by tomorrow. Yes.